multiple ideologies and worldviews can coexist at the same time.
Is twerking appropriate or not? What did we used to call twerking before?
Nobody's going to come save us. Nobody's going to give out the handout to us, the clarity, the blueprints, roll out the red carpet. And I know you know this, and I know this.
Daring to redefine ourselves above and beyond the box.
Hi there. Welcome to Unspeakable Leadership, a space that transcends time, borders, and barriers to reclaim our stories as women of color, leading in organizations, communities, and in our own lives. I'm your host, Rohene Bouajram. With a 20-year career trajectory of leadership, an aspiring storyteller, mom of a son and a fur baby, first-generation immigrant, an uninvited guest in Canada, I want to thank you for being on this journey with me. Let us grow together in conversation. I am honestly still integrating all of the thoughts and all of the insights and the epiphanies and everything that has really almost been unearthed as a result of my conversation with Kay Thellot that I am so excited for you to listen to. Here's what I want you to watch out for. Kay introduces this concept, which is so powerful, and she says, the past announces the future. And I have to say, when she said that in our conversation, I not only felt tingles in my body, but it was almost like my soul leaped. And I want to tell you why I believe that's so important amongst the many things that you will hear and see and feel and watch as part of this episode. You see, for many of us, we are given a standard of success, a threshold of how much we can achieve. And we're also taught that sometimes when we step out of the boundaries or off the edge, something bad will happen. Fear becomes the lens through which we start to see life and make choices around that too. A great friend of mine just recently shared with me that the qualities of fear are similar to the qualities of excitement. But the question becomes, how do we tell the difference between the two? Well, I think you'll hear some of that in this episode. But here's what I want you to remember. Making the decision to cross the line could look like fear, masked as excitement. Or it could be the other way around. But how do you get to excitement? Well, I think three things are really important. One, when you want something and it's coming from the whispers or it's coming from a place of time and time again, you keep hearing this call, then I want you to really listen to it. Spend time reflecting on it, journal, meditate, because it's once you understand what that call is that you'll move to the next step. And the next step is to be able to design for yourself your own strategic plan for your life, for that next step. Nobody's going to come save us. Nobody's going to give out the handout to us, the clarity, the blueprints, roll out the red carpet. And I know you know this, and I know this. But wouldn't it be nice? But here's the thing. You can create your own strategic plan. You can start to design and conceptualize what could life look like. You can start to put together what is that implementation plan. Create milestones, create timelines, and start to delegate who in your life do you need to help you. And the third and probably most important step that I want you to remember is each and every one of us are destined for bigger and better things. And it's returning to that quiet voice, that younger self, where the past announced the future, that I think you'll remember exactly who you were meant to be. So cross the line, knowing that you already know everything within to get to where you're meant to go. hope you'll enjoy this conversation. I know I certainly did. To say that I have been deeply excited for this conversation would be honestly an understatement, in part because the conversation that we're about to have and the topic that we're about to have is something that is deeply important to me, and I imagine will be deeply important to you as well. But before we go into it, let me tell you who the exceptional person is who will be leading probably many of the sound bites of this conversation. Kay Thellot. Kay Thellot is currently a practicing ethnotherapist and founder of Prensip Minokan. Prensip Minokan is a mental health resource whose vocation reaches for Black liberation. Based in Montreal, Kay offers therapy and workshops set in community, artistic, and spiritual spaces, both in person and virtually, as well as transcultural consultation services to institutions and organizations in Greater Montreal. Prensip Minokan operates through an empowerment lens geared towards uplifting traditional African and Afro-Diasporic knowledge and methods as an identity-firming path for re-indigenizing wellness and healing. Kay offers support that takes into account identity, cultural, historical, spiritual, and geopolitical issues influencing mental health among her clients identifying as Black, African, or from the African diaspora. Kay, thank you so much for joining us here on Unspeakable Leadership. I am truly grateful for you saying yes to being on season 4.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. And I'm also really, really excited to chat with you today. It's great.
Truly, truly. Can I, I just want to give those who are listening and also watching us part of when I build the podcast and I think of how do we bring in incredible voices and experiences. I often will ask guests if they're interested in having a sort of a pre session for us to just vibe and check in and identify where we're going to go with the conversation. And I have to say, Kay, you and we met and we've never met before. This was like our first time.
Yeah.
And at some point we were getting into like where we could go, what we could talk about, all of these things. And at some point I'm like, this is feeling like we're doing the episode right now.
It's the podcast in the moment. It was amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
It was amazing. And we almost had to say, okay, we have to stop. We have to stop because we have to wait. We have to wait.
Yes. Let's not give all the juice while
Yes,
we're
all
not
the
recording. We have to get the juice while we're recording.
exactly. And I mean, I have no doubt that the juice is gonna come. Like that I know for certain. But I just wanted to honor that because that's the kind of energy that you bring to spaces. And it when I just even reading your bio, I was like, of course, because I've been able to witness that in just like a small amount of dosage in how I've been able to connect with you virtually. And so I can only imagine the power of your energy when we are in physical spaces.
Thank
so
you.
I just wanted to say that.
Yeah. Thanks. That's appreciated.
Absolutely. So Kay, you have had a phenomenal journey, and I know one that has sort of almost opened you to a lot more than you had ever imagined. So I'd love for you to share with us, what has your leadership journey looked like? Take us through some of those milestones.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think if I were to go back to my 7-year-old self and say, this is what I would be doing every day, it doesn't even feel like work. I would have trouble imagining what
Yeah.
I'm telling myself, right? So this is really a path from, I wouldn't say that I was shy, but I was always a pretty reserved child. And so taking up space, being brought into environments where I'm invited to take up space is actually quite mind blowing for me. I'm born in Toronto, grew up in Montreal, and my parents are of Haitian ancestry. They're born and raised in Haiti. And I grew up with my grandmother in the home. So really these different cultures Haitian culture, Canadian culture, coming into the Francophone, Quebecois culture in Montreal and in Laval, really are the different elements that shaped me as a person. And I think in terms of my path into leadership, I was a child who loved to read from elementary school. And when I was in the fifth or sixth grade, I don't remember other students having this privilege. Maybe they did. But I was invited to read to first graders. And I remember walking around in the halls and having first graders call me Madame K or like Miss K, the way you would call a teacher. And I
Yeah.
remember feeling like, but I'm a kid, and then I have this position of having an impact. And so it started off, I guess, this way. But on the flip side, I also experienced a lot of direct racism as a child. And so this piece around identity, ancestry, where do I come from? Why is my identity received this way here? But my family would take us to trips in Haiti during the months off school. So my identity would switch because I'm Canadian born and I'm going back to where my family is from. So just these questions around identity have always been present, and then being propelled into positions where I get to talk and share and take up space, I think has been a recurring theme, and that ultimately brought me into positions like today.
Oh, I mean, can I just first say, to have had, and it's not always about titles, right? But I just want to acknowledge this particular title, like to have that, and I know particularly in the French context, like having that Madame,
Hmm.
elevates the level of being younger to now like it's seen as wiser and
Yeah.
older, right? Like, and so
Mhm.
to have had that bestowed upon you right from the beginning, when you were younger, like that in its essence almost kind of gives this validation and this affirmation that I have wisdom to give. I can
Mhm.
make that impact, and that can be so freeing to be able to know that about yourself
Mhm.
without ever almost questioning it the way that society does. And you've shared with us, Kay, that also those layers of racism and those structural elements that then often chip away at us,
Right.
to be able to say, well, actually, no, let's put you in your place and,
Right.
stay in your lane, then become that tension between what we know versus what we're told we should know. And so I really want to just like say thank you, uplift you for bringing those themes to the conversation because they're so crucial and for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Madame K was always going to be a Madame K right from the beginning,
Right? It's
right?
in hindsight, right? When you
Yeah,
tell that little 10-year-old, 11-year-old that I was when I was put in that
yeah,
position,
yeah,
it's just that confidence boost, and in a
yeah,
space that sometimes felt really, really hostile, but to
yeah,
experience that at the same time, right? That
yeah,
juxtaposition was really special, and I feel like I still kind of wade in that now.
yeah,
So it's
yeah.
funny how the past announces the future, and
Oh,
how all of that kind of, weaves itself together. And then in the end, it's like, you know
yeah,
what? I never thought I'd be here, but it makes
yeah,
sense when I look at my story through time. It's like, okay,
yeah,
I see the tidbits that kind of announce
yeah.
things. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And the past announces the future.
Mhm.
I have tingle. I have tingle as soon as you said that. I was like, oh my gosh, which I know is probably where we're gonna
Mhm.
go because
We're gonna go.
yeah, we're gonna go. We're gonna go. So let me ask you this as we start to go deeper because oh my gosh, I'm so grateful that you said that. The theme of season 4 is crossing the line. And we really sort of encapsulate it in the theme of she crossed the line. What does this mean to you, and where has it emerged in your life, in your leadership journey, in the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you kind of mentioned it in terms of your description of, how racism could tell you to stay in your lane or stay in a certain box, right? And as women of color and as a black woman, right, that lane is really restrained, right? It's a tiny,
Right?
tiny
This is
box,
tidy.
and
Yeah.
it's not to your advantage, it's to your detriment. And in terms of spiritually, because I do see my path and my growth in a very spiritual position, I was raised Catholic by my family, but with my Haitian origins, Vodou was never explicitly talked about, but from some spiritual mechanism, I was having dreams with words my mom or my grandma or my father didn't teach me. And so there was always this moment when I would relay these dreams to my mom and say, "Well, what does so and so word mean?" And she'd tense up because of the taboo around our ancestral
Right.
practices. She'd tense
Yeah.
up and she'd give me the basic dictionary definition,
Mm,
but she wouldn't give me the layers of it.
right.
And so
Right.
daring to cross the line for me was the fear to announce to my grandmother, who always said, "No, no, no, these ancestral practices aren't good." I was afraid to tell her that I was going to cross the line and get initiated. And so when I go to visit her and I tell her, and I'm afraid, for me, she's going to repudiate me for the rest of her life. Like she would never
Right.
speak to me again. And then she looks
Yeah.
at me and she goes, "I knew it." And then she started to pick out moments from my childhood and talked about it with
Wow.
a sister of mine, of these moments of how she knew I was going to step into the role of being an
Yeah.
initiate, of being a mambo. And so that daring to cross for me represents daring to redefine ourselves above and beyond the box, right?
Yes.
Those
Yeah.
colonial and abusive and racist lanes to demonize, marginalize, put
Mm-hmm.
our ancestral wisdoms aside, daring to cross that line meant reconciling with my grandma in a whole new way. She started talking about all, and I'm like, "You knew all these things
All of these things.
come from
Yeah.
our family?" And I felt like I didn't have enough time with her.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it gave me courage to continue stepping over the line, right? So for me, in a nutshell, right, that's how I would say relationship with my grandmother, relationship with my ancestry, with culture, just breaking those boundaries and daring to grow beyond them and be like, okay, I'm, I'm going to take this space because it's been whispering at me since I was a child.
Can I just, really share what is so alive for me right
Mhm.
now from what you just shared, Kay, is um, first of all, so many of us are are taught, and then we believe that there's only a threshold of success, and there's enough evidence in our, I think, our societies and in our workplaces that reinforce this idea that there's only, a few of you who are going to, in some cases, when I just think of leadership, climb up the leadership ladder, or success is going to be defined by how somebody evaluates whether or not you are a certain type of person, and anything that's outside the realm of normal, you're then put in another box of that's the person who, doesn't fit in, doesn't belong, doesn't align, right? So I want to first sort of tease that out. And so many of us are almost going through this internal struggle, and that's what you have shared with us of, I could live in the default. I could definitely fall back into the default. But if I do that, there's something that's continuously tapping me on my shoulder that's saying, no, 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 not this. Choose better, right? And it's those whispers that you were saying. And then the second thing I want to acknowledge that you said is when we hear those whispers, because of that conditioning, that there is such a thing between a line of normal and abnormal, that we then get fearful.
Right.
right? And we start to fear that I can't, like, if I listen to the voices, if I dream the dreams and
Hmm.
then I start to actually see the dreams coming into play and they're happening, and oh my gosh, could I be having premonitions, and what does this mean about me? And like, so we start to then suppress, or we don't necessarily speak about it to each other because we're afraid. And and as you mentioned, there's some family members in our family systems that would often say, don't touch that, like that's not what we do,
Hmm.
you know.
Right.
And then the final just theme that I see you really raising for us is, when you do cross that line, you actually end up living a very different life.
Right. Right.
Like, so tell us, what has that looked like for you?
My goodness. I think this is where sometimes I pause and I go, I couldn't have made this up for myself if I tried, right? I really do feel like daring to cross the line into, well, what am I good at? Right? Once I was blessed with the opportunity to be initiated in the voodoo practice, it was, so now what? What do we do with this really big ritual that centered me and immersed me in a world where I said, this cannot be part-time. This cannot
Yeah.
be something I just kind of keep in the shadows. And I do want to acknowledge the violent history in Haiti, in all around the world, towards these ancestral practices that made it that it was a survival tactic on my mother and my grandmother's part to keep me away from what was awakening within me. Because for many, many centuries, and even still today, it's dangerous for some
Hmm.
people to come out and speak of their practice the way that I am, right? And so coming into a place where I say, now that I've gone through this ritual and I'm back in Canada after going to Haiti for it, how do I serve? And then realizing, again, being in elementary school and reading to the children, my volunteer work, my work in community psychosocial work. I had a bachelor's in psychology, working in institutions, working with youth. And then I realized, well, this is what I'm good at. This has been my
Yeah.
career all this time before meeting you, my
Right.
ancestors, this way. So,
Yeah.
how can we continue to use what I've already been working on and that you've kind of been guiding me? Just these opportunities as, like, I think that was you guys. And so
Yeah.
deciding to go do a master's where I was observing the juxtaposition between how do we define wellness and unwellness and address these things according to our respective ways of knowing. So Afro-Diasporic ways of knowing, like Vodun, or the Haitian specifically Vodun. I say specifically Haitian because there are different ancestral practices from the continent that aren't identical to what we have because of different circumstances, notably enslavement and the colonial experience definitely shaped, what we find in this Caribbean country. In Western psychology, right? It's a frame of knowing like any other frame of knowing. And so when you step out of white supremacy and say psychology is a frame of knowing like any other, then all of a sudden, whoop, you've got other frames of knowing that kind of rise and become buoyant. And then you can kind of look at them together and say, hey, can how have we been keeping ourselves well for all these centuries through all these violences and coming out with just this cultural radiance? How do we still radiate light through all these different things we collectively experience? And for me, a big way of answering that is looking at the archive my ancestors left with me in Vodun, right?
Hmm.
Studying Haitian Vodun from a psychosocial point of view, not only from its mystical point of view. And so all of a sudden, all these ways of addressing what's invisible about us started to make sense in a psychosocial way. So that's how I built my private practice in trying. It's not the only route, but trying to offer a decolonial and re-indigenized Afrocentric mental health service of saying we've been keeping ourselves relatively well for a long time. We did not wait for Western psychology to appear and invent itself for us to now try and be well. We've been keeping ourselves well. How have we been doing it? So that's how crossing the line into saying it's not so much that Western psychology isn't doesn't have its strengths. It's crossing the line into saying maybe you're not as special as you're trying to say you are in a white supremacist lens, right?
Totally.
You're but
Yeah.
you're those who birthed you are humans like others, and I believe all humans came up with solutions. You are a frame of solutions. Are there others? Wait a minute. My ancestors had others. My ancestors had similar ones. Some of our approaches kind of cross. Some of our approaches are radically different. And so, as a Haitian raised, Canadian born Black person in North America, how can I tap into my ancestry? How can I tap into these things and finding myself ushered in positions of leadership and saying, well, can we think about this collectively? What does this look like?
I mean, what a powerful way to open up your, not only yourself but your practice, and then also the individuals you serve, your clients and the organizations, to helping them recognize that multiple ideologies and worldviews can coexist at the same time, right? And so much of what you have shared is the history and the violence of many indigenous communities, and I'm going to use sort of this overarching term indigenous in relation to, there are indigenous individuals in on the continent, there are indigenous individuals in, let's say, um, like Southern American context, there's indigenous on the Caribbean, etc. And many of them have not been able to, in some cases, maintain and also pass down their ancestral practices because of colonization, because of violence, in that if they practiced it, they were reprimanded for it, or they were told that they were doing typically the work of the devil.
Right.
That's usually, I think, in the religious context, that was often what was labeled.
Yeah.
And so we can see why there's a fear that
Mm-hmm.
has been passed down to be able to say, stay away from this, or just don't express it in
Right.
public, because then that way nobody knows. Um, and yet, Kay, what you remind me of, and you talked about your grandmother, and I'm going to talk about my grandmother. Like, so much of what she taught me growing up was medicine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medicine from
Yes.
the earth, medicine that we could incorporate day after day, herbs, how to ensure that there was incense. And those were all ancestral practices that were passed down for both safety and for also protection, but also for well-being. And I know I'm sort of scratching the surface because there's a lot more to that, but I can't help but then wonder for you, as you started to rediscover your ancestral practices, were there some of them that you almost felt as if, like, where were you my whole life?
Mm-hmm. I would say the main vehicle that I often say saved my life was dancing, right?
Yeah,
Dancing.
yeah.
Dancing for me saved my life because I think that there are colonial forms of violence that purposefully alienate you from your
Hmm.
body. It takes you
Hmm.
out of body, whether we call it in the
Yes,
Western sense, dissociation or just
right.
fight, freeze, of,
Yeah,
and
I know. I'm trying to remember. Flight, yeah,
right, fight,
fight,
flee.
flight, freeze, and there's a fourth.
Yes, there is fawning. I should know this
Yes.
by heart.
No, no, it's fine. Don't worry. It's Friday. It's Friday.
It's Friday, but really, it ejects you out of your body. And so many of our practices are body centered. And so for me, dancing was a way for me to re-enter my body. And the dance that I stumbled upon, honestly, was traditional Haitian dance. And these dances were curated for stage and for performance, but they're rooted in the Vodou practice. So with live drumming, preferably when possible, and going along the different rites that we have, the different ritual families or ritualistic categories that we have. So some of them are for prayer, some of them are for fighting, some of them are for love, some of them, touch on life and death. So these different themes that are in the practice are in the dances. And that's the dance medium and the dance universe that I literally say saved my life, because it reintegrated me back in my body. And I feel like watching Western psychology right now, I don't want to call it in vogue, but what's receiving a lot of attention are somatic practices.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then noticing some of the movements and the practices, I'm like, but humans have been moving
Yeah.
in these ways for millennia.
Yeah.
But then you
Yeah.
have this colonial episode that
Yeah.
marginalized that and put that
Totally.
aside. And then now we're getting it repackaged in Western
Mm-hmm.
psychology and saying, oh, here is what you
Yeah.
should be doing with your body. But we have been, since
Yeah.
time immemorial, as you've mentioned, the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island, of the Americas, of Africa, the Caribbean, Asia, Polynesia, and of Europe as well, right? And so, as a member of an Afro-Diasporic community, in terms of being a dark skinned Afro presenting Haitian woman, that social location gives me access to how people who were subjugated into enslavement, so they were not
Yeah.
slaves, they
Mm-mm.
were bent
They were forced into
into
it.
an
Yeah.
artificial social
Yeah.
construct of enslavement, resisted in the body. So many ways we speak in Haitian Creole center the body. So much of our spiritual practice is in the body, the dancing in the body. So I would say that the primary door, aside from dreaming as a kid, was dancing. And it was an important part of growing up. My mom loved to dance. And so finding this specific dance was really just an extension of what my mom transmitted to me, my grandmother being present when we dance all together. So yeah, the body and dancing and drumming, as it were, an important vehicle into, yeah, the form of my practice.
I'm so glad that you shared this with us, and that you also found something that could ignite that remembrance, because
Hmm.
I think that's so much of what many of us, as we think about crossing the line, and I really like, I want those who are listening and watching to know, part of the reason of choosing this theme is each guest, like yourself, Kay, you'll have a different take and a different way of defining it, and then a different way of offering ways in which people can think about, what does this mean in relation to me, where I am in my life, or in my career, or in my leadership. And the theme that often comes up every season is each and every one of us are almost going back and remembering the strengths that we have, that have been gifted and passed down through our DNA and through our ancestors. And it's like you just said, it's like at at many points in history there's been a disconnect that has impacted our body in recognizing that the things that we know to be true, the things that we can remember, we have been so completely torn away from, that it's almost like it's a journey back to who we are. And I I really hope and want anybody who's listening, who's thinking about, you know, understanding more about their ancestral practices, or maybe is left curious with, this keeps happening. I need to I need to understand it because I I have to. I'm curious for you, Kay, in your discovery and your journey of going back and remembering. Were there people who influenced you? I know your grandmother was one of them, but as part of your initiation, were there people who you realized this is who I needed to reach out to? And what strategies would you give to somebody who might be wondering, how do I cross that line, and where do I go to cross it?
Absolutely. Well, 100, 100%. The community that welcomed me into their spiritual family.
Yeah.
So we call them a mama fey. So um, your your leaf mother. So
Oh,
the background behind that is that
yeah.
Odun is one of the many images we use to talk about it is being like a tree. And so you have your roots and then you have your leaves, right? And so the person who ushers you into the practice is seen as kind of like a horticulturalist, the one that like brings a leaf onto their genealogy or into their tree. So my leaf mother, and with that image, I would really acknowledge her in welcoming and bringing me into um, how her family practices, but also different friends as well. I'm thinking of a very dear friend of mine who is kind of like a great aunt slash a great like a grandmother to me. So for some reason, I'm surrounded by elders and older people a lot, and I've had the privilege to go to Benin. I've had the privilege to go to Cameroon. I've had the privilege to go to Ghana very recently, where going back to the continent, I know it could be quite pricey, life is expensive, it's not easy, but I feel like every Black person of the African Afro diaspora should find a way to immerse themselves or in their Caribbean ancestry or in their African ancestry. And inherent to the violences in centuries past and not so far past, we don't know where exactly we come from as an individual, but I would really say just the soil, just
Yeah. Oh gosh.
step
Yes.
foot on
I
it.
100%. Like I can attest to that.
Right? I would say
Yeah.
don't get bogged down by Western ideas of I should know specifically where I come from and go only there, right? Get your feet on the soil. Immerse yourself in culture. I feel like Afro-diasporic and African ancestral practices, um, they are spiritual, but they are very social as well. It is very possible to explore different African cultures and remain within the faith that you already ascribe to. There isn't this obligation that you must practice the ancestral practice, but reconciling what has been wounded by the lies told about how bad that they are and how scary that they are, and it kind of comes to encompass like an Afrophobia. Anything
Hmm.
African now is scary. Anything black
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
scary,
It's
right?
scary.
It's more than just the practice. It it
Yeah.
it comes to encompass so much. So I would say immersing yourselves in culture. It could be just music on YouTube, right? Explore different artists. There's so much music above and beyond just Western pop, Western music. Explore different music and train your ear to hear beauty in different ways of constructing rhythm and sound and harmonies. But if you can afford to go, I get your feet on the soil. It's life changing. Mhm.
Oh, thank you for offering so many, practical steps and pieces. One that somebody can implement as as quick as the next 5 minutes after listening to
Mhm.
this episode, as you've shared. And then one could be a long-term vision, right, that people can work towards. And so much of what you've shared, Kay, is again this returning to home, returning to a base, returning to a root,
Right.
and that can be applicable to many people who are part of different diasporic communities, and it's a thread that I think is so crucial that you have really uplifted and drawn for us as to what the power is when you make that decision and that choice to honor who you are and who your ancestors have always been. And so I want to say thank you for taking us through a journey of your own life, but also
Mhm.
sharing what that could look like for somebody who might be thinking of crossing the line.
Yeah.
I am. I am curious. I always ask these last two questions to guests because I cannot believe you're almost at time.
Right.
This is so hard. It's like I know we've scratched the surface, and there's much more that we could probably talk about. But I do want to honor your time as well. And so I guess my question is, last two questions. The first one is, I want to picture, a woman of color who listens to this episode, and there are different points in their journey. Um, but what they do know is that they know that they are destined for more, and they want to make that step forward. What would be your final message to that woman who is just like her feet is hovering, but
Right.
how does she step?
Right. I would say step back into your body. I feel like there is so much work done against the Black female body because it's the one that I inhabit. It's the same for other bodies as well, but the Black female presenting body, what it means as a woman to step back into your hair, step back into your skin, step back into your figure, step back into your features, right? An experience that I felt when I went to Ghana this summer. I had gone for work, and so I had these scholarly ideas of how I would describe my work. And I knew I was going to go on different cultural excursions and, okay, we're going to go do these things. And what was so powerful for me was coming in and embodying what's conceptual. So it's easy to think about things as theories, as definitions, as concepts, as things outside that you could di- dissect and but when you live them in the body, for example, going out with your hair unbraided, untexturized, what does it do to your body? What? How am I going to be seen? Oh, I look unkept. Oh, I this, right? Um, what does it feel like to step out into the world in your body as it is? And so experiencing all of what I kind of thought about as concepts, experiencing them in in my body with a group of people. So crying together, celebrating together, um, facilitating spaces of reconnecting ancestrally, working as a Mambo on the continent. What? I get to bring my ancestral Afro-Diasporic practice and practice it where it comes from and have members of the local community say, I recognize those gestures. How are you posing these gestures? And I'm like, really? These are gestures you recognize that my ancestors kept alive for 500 years? And I'm Canadian born and I don't realize I'm replicating gestures that are millennia old? It's being in the body and being like, this moment calls for that. This moment called for libation. This moment called for a given song. This moment called for naming the people we love who have passed on. So getting to that for me was reconciling and reclaiming a relationship with my body. For me, it started with dance. For some people, it might be cooking and returning to the culinary flavors of home. For some people, it could be the fabric and the clothing. It could be reclaiming language. It could be reclaiming dance moves, right? Is twerking appropriate or not? What did we used to call twerking before this
Yeah, before it got co-opted.
the
Mm-hmm.
Western hijacking of
Yeah,
just and what's so wrong about me moving my hips as I do,
absolutely.
right? So it's how the female body has been picked at
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
reclaiming it from that picking and saying, but this is how I move, this is how I taste, this is how I feel. Claim your body. Yeah.
Thank you, Kay.
Mhm.
Thank you so much. Like that I'm just even feeling even in my body right now. There's just so much.
Right.
There's so much energy that's like it's coming up, it's going down, it's coming up, it's going down. But it feels for me like it's a calibration that's happening. It's like an integration of everything that you're saying. My body is responding, and
Mhm.
so much of at least for me, like in a lot of the embodiment practices that I grew up, and they call it embodiment now, but growing up, we didn't call it embodiment. We just call it everyday thing,
Right.
like, but now I'm like, oh, there's a name for it.
Right.
So, but it was always about, we are carriers of energy and our souls
Yes.
are needing that constant calibration. And so, your offer and your reminder to return to our bodies, I think many of us uh, need to follow, because so much of what we've been told has been to disassociate, escape, or find other ways to uh, find safety, and yet our safety is actually right within. So
Right.
I want to say thank you, and as we end our time, Kay, I have no doubt that there are going to be many who want to stay in touch with you, find out more about you, sign up for whatever the next thing is that you have ready. So how can people connect in with you and keep in touch?
Yes, absolutely. So the name of my private practice is Prensip Minokan. It is a Haitian Creole term. So I will spell it out in a second so folks could take note. Maybe prepare your pen and paper because I will spell how to write it out. And what it's referring to is we have this sacred calligraphy, this sacred way of identifying different deities, different energies that surround us called Veve. And one Veve is the Minokan. And the principe of the Minokan Veve, or the principles of the Minokan Veve, is interconnectedness, balance, interdependence. And so it's really how do we integrate all of the different parts of ourselves into a working whole. So reclaiming the body, reclaiming our knowledges, recontextualizing why our knowledges are considered a certain way in its geopolitical and socio-political stakes, right? So all of that reintegration work is the center post or the potomitan of my work. So Principe Minokan is P-R-E-N as in Nancy, S-I-P, that's the first word. And then Minokan is Minokan.com is my website. If you search that in YouTube, you'll find my page with some past lives that I had hosted. So, a lot of information in those videos, and also on Facebook. My Instagram page is not very active, but if you go for the .com, that's one landing page where you could then connect to the other avenues. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kay. And I have no doubt that there will be somebody who was furiously writing and then would probably need to pause and be like, wait a minute, did I
Right.
get the right E or the right M? So
Yes.
I appreciate you. And we will also have all of your socials on the show notes as well. So for those of you who also want to just find with the click of a button the incredible work that Kay is doing, you'll be able to see that. Kay, it has been an honor to be in your company, to be in your wisdom. And thank you so much for being so open to sharing and for highlighting to us the possibilities of what happens when you cross the line and you return to who you were always meant to be. Thank you for being on Unspeakable Leadership. Are you looking for a keynote that inspires people to move from nodding along to taking action? Well, I speak on the leadership we need now, not the one in the old playbook. From Dismantle the Matrix, Redefining Leadership for the Future, to A Love Letter to My Future Self, my keynotes blend research, real life stories, and practical tools that your audience can apply immediately and the very next day. You've heard some of my ideas on my podcast with leaders like Alta Gracia, where we examined leadership and the different models, including traditional and non traditional ones, to conversations about the blending of artificial intelligence and ancient intelligence with Leslie, to topics like ambition with Bianca King. On stage, they land even deeper. If you're planning a conference, a retreat, or a leadership summit, let's craft a message and a talk that aligns with your goals and your audience. When I debuted A Love Letter to My Future Self at the Visibility Women's Conference in Montreal in 2024, I received so many glowing positive reviews of how something as simple as a letter can change how big you can dream. And dreaming we must do as women. Our untapped gifts, bridging communities through what we carry, that I delivered at the Rethinking Community Diverse Community Voices conference held in Kamloops in 2025, grounded leaders and community members to have critical conversations on inclusion and reconciliation. Head on over to my website where you will find my media kit and my booking link. I am ready for your stage next. I can't wait to connect.